Hey, today I'm going to go through the SPSS and focus sections in Chapter 1 of the book Statistics for the Behavioral Sciences. And so this SPSS program is a statistics package that lets us perform different tests and analyze data. And so with Chapter 1, what we want to do is look at how to enter data. So then you can go from there to analyze it. And so we're going to start by clicking on New Data Set. And the first thing we want to do is click over to this variable view. And so in the example data we have GPA data for 3 different statistics classes. And so our variables in this case are going to be the 3 classes. And so we're going to go with class 1. We're going to be careful not to put a space in between class and 1 because that's an invalid character. And so when we enter class 1, it's going to come up and the default is that's a numeric variable, which GPA data is. But our data only has 1 decimal point, so we want to go ahead and change that. And then we want to enter our other 2 classes. And so we've got our other 2 classes entered now. Again, we set each of these to 1 decimal point. We left them all as numeric data because they are. And we're going to go ahead and click over to the data view. And you notice that our 3 variable headings, class 1, class 2, class 3, pop up right here in the first 3 columns. And then we can go ahead and enter our data clicking on the cell and then typing in the values. And so our first GPA data was 3.3. And we can go on down the row and enter each of the GPA data that's provided in the sample in the text for each of the variables. And so we'll skip forward a moment so you don't. Alright, and so now we've got our data entered for all 3 variables, and from here we could do some of the analysis tools that we'll see in later chapters on the SPSS and focus sections. However, sometimes our data is not sorted like this into columns by variable, and so you can enter SPSS data in rows. And so we're going to go ahead and open a new window and do that, and again we'll go to the variable view to start. And this time we're going to have 2 variables, and we're going to have to enter it a little bit differently. So our first variable is classes, and it gives us the same options for is it numeric data, is it how many decimal places. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of those decimal places, because what we're actually going to do here is code the entry. And so class 1 will have the code of 1, class 2 would have the code of 2. And so we're going to click over on the values, and this little blue box comes up. We want to click that. And so our value, we want to tell it if we enter 1, we would like that to be labeled class 1. And so we can hit add, and we want to go ahead and tell it if the value 2 is in this column, go ahead and label that class 2. And then finally, if the value of 3 is there, why don't you go ahead and label that class 3 and add there. So we've got our 3 labels inputted. We do have another variable, and that's GPA. And so our GPA data is again numeric, but we want to pay attention that it is still just the 1 decimal point. And so we're going to go ahead and click over on the data view, and we're going to have a little bit different view this time. So the first time we looked at this, we had our 3 classes across the top. This time we have a label for classes and a label for GPA. And so what we're going to do with our data here is enter it in code. So our first class was 1, so the code for it was 1 for class 1, and its GPA was 3.3. And then we'll go ahead and pause a moment while we go ahead and enter the rest of the data. Alright, so we've got our data entered. You might be wondering why go ahead and code it, and this seems like more work than the original way, which is separate columns. The nice way with thing about coding your data is that you could set up the same data set with several variables. So you could look at what class they're in, their sex, their age, whatever. You could add all those variables as columns and code each of those, and then have several variables in the same data set, which is going to make your analysis a lot more efficient later.